Welcome to the Business Finance Podcast, brought to you by the Best Finance Group, bringing you expert insights, real-life case studies, interviews, and the latest industry news. Join us every week as we cover everything you need to know about business finance.
Yeah, so Matt, it's great to have you on the Business Finance Podcast and get hopefully an insight for our viewers into the world of accountancy. And so first place to start is, what ways would you say the online accountant, your practice, differs from others, traditional accountancy practices and tax services?
Firstly, thanks for having me as well. So if I give you guys a bit of a background, so I started up about 10 years ago. We initially were sort of a very traditionalist accountancy practice, Davies, Hart and Co. Limited. I was working as almost an outsourced FD. So it wasn't just compliance work, but sort of going into bigger companies and where they didn't quite need a full-time FD, I would sort of fill that gap. I very quickly realized that the more that company grew, the more I did myself out of a role, because they obviously need a full-time guy. So that's when, again, I've worked with marketing agencies and things like that. So we had the idea of the online accountant. Again, we bought the URL, so it helped us out largely with marketing and that type of thing in sort of generating leads. But we were sort of looking at targeting the sort of up to 2 million turnover, but it was a case of, we were doing the compliance work, but also bringing that element of the outsourced FD work in with it as well in a cost efficient manner. So it seems to work quite well. Clients are very receptive to it. Like I say, with regards to compliance, the issue you often have with that is you have to do it. You have to do compliance, but a lot of that compliance point is always done after the events happen. So yes, you do that, but we also want to bring in that outsourced FD right, where we're forecasting. So what's your tax bill gonna be? Are we better off buying an asset now, or making a contribution before, or holding the money back for certain aspects? So hopefully that gives you guys a good insight.
It does, absolutely, yeah. And it's really interesting there on the FD side, because I presume that's what people and the viewers kind of want to hear more than ever, isn't it? Knowing the numbers and having that additional service, because compliance, is it sort of just quite regulated? And
Exactly that. So I mean, if I take the example of, let's say, a limited company, their accounting deadline to submit the return and pay the tax is usually around 9 months after their year end.
Right.
If we get to that point and we haven't done anything, there isn't a lot I can do for them or help them out. But I mean, if it's 3 months before the year end and we can see where we're heading, that's where we can make those changes. I mean, if they've got extra cash in the business, that's where we'd look at pensions, or if they're thinking of getting a van or anything like that, then we would do that. I mean, I'm just going to caveat that. I do get a lot of tradesmen who'll say to me, I've made too much money, I'm going to buy a van. So I'll say to them, do you actually need it? I said, well, no. So you buy a 50 grand van and save 10 grand worth of tax, then you've got an asset you don't need. So it's just working with people really and doing the right thing. But
there is a lot of change happening, and with national insurance being raised, wasn't it, back in April, and obviously we've got the budget coming up in November. Making tax digital, that's something that we've heard a lot. Good to have a little brief overview on what you believe will benefit, or if there are any benefits to business owners.
I'll use the words benefits loosely, but yeah, no, there are. You're absolutely right. So making tax digital has been around for a little while now, certainly with VAT and payroll, although it's not referred to as making tax digital. We are having to submit payroll data almost in real-time information. Up until this point, sole traders haven't had to do this, but from April 26 onwards, if the turnover, and this includes landlords as well, is more than 50 grand per annum, then they're going to have to do quarterly submissions. And effectively what that will mean is it won't change payment dates or anything like that, but every 3 months there needs to be a submission to HMRC to say how that business is doing, where the profit's currently sitting. So I think rather than HMRC waiting till a long time past the year end, so for example, in April, 5th of April, you don't have to file now until January, whereas this is going to be in real-time information almost. So there are benefits to it. I mean, there are some people who don't, I mean, stereotypically, they may not they put their head in the sand and they don't want to bring their records to you until the 29th of January. They haven't a clue sort of how they're getting on, and they're always the one who's they're often have a bill which they don't like. So I think for those type of people, it makes sense to adopt technology early, and get on board with it, and hopefully they'll have a better grasp of their numbers. Obviously there are some drawbacks where there's extra expense and those type of things involved, certainly with obviously the software type, and obviously recording that through with accountants and things. So yeah, but like I say, I do think there are benefits to it. And I think, but again, it's just getting that early adoption in terms of planning for it as well. So you don't get to the 6th of April. I think we got to do something.
Yeah, and I suppose is making people more in real time, isn't it, rather than waiting, because everyone, in my opinion, anyway, really accountancy package. You're the man in the know is very minimal cost, if nothing at all sometimes, and everyone should really, if you're a business owner, be adopting these practices. Would you say?
Yeah, I think it's very good to, I mean, we're in a day and age where technology is rife everywhere. It's not a case anymore of dropping off a bag of receipts and we're having to. There are solutions to everything. I mean, sadly, people do see a cost with that, but there are. I mean, they're not looking at the cost savings of the issues and the delayed payments for tax, any fines type things. So like I say, there are certain software packages out there which really do help with it. And I mean, every person now these days seems to have a smartphone which it will work off. So yeah, I mean, it's certainly worth planning for anyway.
Yeah, brilliant. And if we were moving to transition into the world of business acquisitions, we've seen this more than ever since COVID, people buying and selling businesses. I'm not sure if you have yourself, Matt, but what would you, if you have you seen any sort of, what would you be advising clients or giving them considerations on when they are looking to buy another business? What financial checks do you believe are the essential ones? So if someone comes to you and says, Matt, I want to buy a business, what will you sort of be checking out, I suppose?
So first thing I'd check is their motivations, because that can sort of dictate what route we go down. So I mean, for example, if somebody had a lot of money saved up and they were looking to potentially realize some value on that money, they may look to buy a business, but they don't want to get too actively involved. So that might dictate whether we want a very high profitable cash business where they just want to get a return on their investment and they're pulling out lots of dividends. But I mean, in a nutshell, we will be looking at various areas. Profitability and turnover, they're always key. We then want to look at the balance sheet. We don't want to be I mean, we may do, but on the whole, people don't want businesses in distress with negative equity, those type of things. Cash flow is always key when we look at this, because again, in your line of work, sometimes we have to finance these acquisitions, and I think there's a bit of a common sort of people don't realize how accessible things are these days, do they? And I think if you can get the numbers right, I mean, if we can cash flow the finance on these things, then it can really sort of open up a world of opportunities on the acquisition front. But again, there's certainly, when we're looking at what we want to achieve from it. I mean, like I said, even we could go into things like turnover. Turnover may be high, but we then look at the contracts. If it's one client, that's a fairly risky acquisition. If all your turnover is coming from one client, I mean, I call it the pyramid scheme, where if you've got a tall, thin pyramid, it's quite risky. One or two clients drop off the bottom, then it could be a major issue in that acquisition.
Yeah. And do you sort of, would you delve down into sort of tax implications potentially of, because that is a consideration we see, on both sides of the fence, if you're selling or you're buying. I suppose if we stick with the buying side, would there be a tax implication for buying that business? Is there a tax liability there potentially?
I mean, potentially there's some reliefs to be had on those things. And again, it's a very good point on when, again, what financials we're looking at when we do buy a business. We are buying that business as a whole. So again, we want to make sure they paid their taxes and they're all up to date. If we take that VAT number, we're then responsible for for everything that's gone on in the past. So the last 6 years they get looked at, then we're effectively, there could be a liability on that. So yeah, taxes, yeah, heavily, and it's how, and again we go back to the motivations for buying, how that will complement your business, and it may not be in the UK, for example, if there's any sort of tax gains to be had.
Yeah.
So yeah, various aspects on that.
Yeah, and have you seen at all people selling, and if there was, say, a large amount of cash which they've built up in the business, they're coming to retirement age, or their motivations have dwindled, where they want to do something else, different industry, and they're sat on a lot of cash in the business, but they want that cash to be utilised as part of the acquisition. Is there any sort of potential tax reliefs that people can benefit from there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, things like that where usually if I go into income tax, people will get remunerated via salary, dividends, that type of model. Once you get into a certain tax bracket, that can be quite costly. If we can wrap up that cash within the sale of the business, we can then look to get a capital gain where the tax rates are a lot less than the higher rate taxes, which creep up to sort of 45%.
Yeah, so they can actually save money, or be more tax efficient rather, as well by selling. So there are multiple routes to extract money.
Exactly. So I mean, again, some of the clients we work with, they often, again, not everyone, but they often have an exit strategy. So if that exit strategy is to, again, build up as much money as possible, we would advise, let's keep the dividends or anything like that to a minimum and then we've got a huge pot of cash within that business.
Yeah.
Again, there's various things we can do with that, but that can contribute to the valuation of selling.
Yeah, because I imagine that all of this would be scrutinised by a buyer anyway, looking at these dividends as well, and then adding things back, because there's EBITDA, the earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization anyway, and then people add certain things back to that as well, won't they? When
yeah, exactly that. So then effectively we restate the financials as if someone else was buying it. So like if I look at my business, I've got a fairly small salary out of that. If I'm looking to value that, I would exchange that. But and again, building up the cash within the business for an eventual sale, that also makes it more attractive to a buyer if they're not having to fund that. So we could look at this as how we value this business. There's various models, but you've got that EBITDA model where it's an earnings potential where we apply a multiplier. But if there's a huge amount of cash within that business as well, that can make a premium of so you may be able to achieve more
a higher sell value. Yeah. That's a brilliant point. Yeah, because from our side, from the finance side, we're looking at the balance sheet. We're looking at how we can leverage and generate the cash flow. And if there's a certain amount of cash in the bank as well, that can be utilised. If there's tax savings to be had and tax efficiencies there, as well as making it, inverted commas, easier for the buying party as well, everyone wins.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, Matt, thanks for joining us today. You've raised some fantastic points around business acquisitions, tax efficiencies, everything else you need to know as a business owner. Come to yourself at Matt, the online accountant.
Yeah.
Where can the viewers find you if
they can find us? So I mean, it's theonlineaccountant.com is our website. We are currently having it revamped, so hopefully if you visit, it should be nice and brand new. So but yeah, if that's an initial point, we've got contacts on there. Again, any initial chats we have, like I say, free of charge. We're very accessible, so people WhatsApp us. I must admit, there's a certain time at night when I hit the pillow, but yeah, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, so what a pleasure it was having Matt on from the Online Accountant.
Yeah.
Some really, really good points raised there, I would say.
Yeah, it was great to have, again, another point of view. And I thought the Making Tax Digital was interesting because change is coming and actually it can help so much. Like we always say, we're trying to help people get finance. All the documents are out of date, just... It's going to help, and I think it's going to be good for everyone. And also like the being an outsourced FD and the example where the guys are going to buy a van because they've got 50 grand and they don't want to give the extra money. So those type of things I thought were really good topics.
Yeah, because I believe that's what business owners can benefit from, isn't it? As well, is having that really solid foundation of the tax and the compliance, but also having someone like Matt being able to have those additional FD services as well really comes into their own, and having those numbers readily available, even if you were a sole trader or a small business now, that you do or you will have to be able to produce that information.
Yeah.
And when it comes to funding, that is 3/4 of our battle, isn't it? Knowing the numbers. So
Yeah, absolutely is. I think when you get people like experts like Matt on, I think it's definitely worth taking a free consultation. Take a half hour, take an hour out of your month, your year, and have that chat. Take advantage of it. It's like we've had IFAs on as well recently. Just take a time to have a chat and see how it could help your business.
Yeah, and knowing your options, isn't it? Because if you do have an accountant currently, are they providing those services, and are they, could Matt provide something different which you're not currently getting, because potentially you might have outgrown that current accountant, because it's a journey, isn't it? Business. Everyone starts as a startup, and then it's as far as you want to take it, but it's having that support along that journey to get you to where you want it to be, and surrounding yourself by people like Matt and others that will give you that support.
Yeah, you can't do it all yourself, can you?
No.
You're going to get to a certain point where you think this is getting a bit too much for me, and that's when you need someone, not full time, but someone like Matt who can come in for perhaps a few hours a week, a month, whatever, and really, really help you get that business to the next level. So yeah, I thought that was a really great conversation.
Yeah, superb.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we hope to see you on the next one. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching. If you need any help with business finance, please get in touch via our website, thebestgroup.co.uk.